Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Lou here of Little Soul Shop, and today I'm going to show you how to seamless finish off. Now, why do we seamless finish off? Well, at the end of your crochet project, you're going to end up with a gap between the first stitch of the round and the last stitch. So to seamless finish off, we're simply going to use our ending tail to loop around and connect the two ends together. So what we're going to do is make another front and back loop using our ending tail to look like the top of another stitch in our last round of stitches. Now, while thinking about today's tutorial, I came up with 4 different categories of crochet projects, and for each one you would seamless finish off slightly differently. So please feel free to skip ahead to the section that best matches your project. The first one is if you have a slip stitch border. This is usually when the border is in a separate color than the rest of the project, and we want to connect the two ends of slip stitches. The second one is if you made single crochet stitches in continuous rounds in a spiral, and this is the most common for most amigurumi projects. The third one is if you've made beginning chains for the height of your project and you want to connect the two ends together. And then last but not least is if you have a wonky shape with lots of different stitch combos and you don't know which stitch to use and where to seamless finish off. In this first section, I'm going to show you how to seamless finish off when you have a border round of slip stitches. And again, please feel free to skip ahead to the section that best matches your project. Okay, so for something like this, you probably made one slip stitch into each stitch from the previous round. Here I used the back loops only to draw this neat border round in a different color. I think in here, the lemon, I used probably the front loops of the previous round, but also one slip stitch into each stitch. So what that means is you should have one less number of slip stitches in your outer round than the number of stitches in your previous round, so that when you seamless finish off and fill in that gap between the beginning and the end of the round, then you'll have the correct number of stitches, because the ending tail will be making another front and back loop to look like another stitch. Okay, so at the end of your round, we're going to skip a stitch. Cut the yarn, pull through. We're going to insert a needle under the front and back loops of the first slip stitch. From the front to the back, pull through. See how that made a loop right here that looks like the front loop of another slip stitch. And then we're going to bring our needle over here and insert it into the back loop of our last slip stitch of the round. And then also whatever is underneath here, this is the back loop of the single crochet from the previous round. So we inserted our needle into the back loop of the slip stitch in our outer round, and also the back loop of the single crochet in the previous round. And then just pull through. See how that neatly connected the two ends of our last round of slip stitches together? And then you can just glue down the tails on the back. Next up, we have seamless finishing off when you've made single crochet stitches in continuous rounds. This is for most amigurumi projects, and what it does is basically makes a spiral with your single crochet stitches, so that at the end of your project, you're left with this gap or a bump at the end of your round, because there's a height difference between the first stitch and the last stitch. So what you want to do here for the seamless finish is help taper down and have the height of the last stitch come down and match up with the beginning of your round, so that it creates a smoother edge. and that helps the bottom of the elf stand up. Here's the seam. This is where I seamless finished off. And then also in this cup right here, here is the seam, and this is where I seamless finished off. Okay, so at the end of your project, for most patterns, they'll have you end on a single crochet stitch. Here's the first single crochet, this is the last single crochet of the round. So here's a little trick I want to show you to help bring down the height. First, I like to make a slip stitch into the first stitch of the round because a slip stitch is slightly lower than a single crochet stitch. So we still want to keep the same number of stitches in our last round. We have this slip stitch over this first single crochet, and see how that's a little bit lower than this height of the last single crochet right here. And then we'll cut the yarn, pull through the tail, and then just like in the slip stitch seamless finish off, we're going to skip a stitch. So here we ended in this stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch, insert our needle into the following stitch, and then thread this end through the yarn needle and use it to make another front and back loop over the stitch that we skipped. So insert your needle from the front to the back through both loops of the following stitch, pull through. See how that's going to look like the front loop of the stitch that we skipped. And then we're going to insert our needle into the back loop of the slip stitch, and also the back loop of the single crochet that's directly underneath. And then when you pull on the tail, adjust the tension. That's going to look just like another stitch over the stitch that you skipped. So here's what's going to look like the front loop. Here's the back loop. Pull to match the tension of all the other stitches in your last round. And then here you can weave in your ending tail on the wrong side. And now I want to show you how to seamless finish off, where the beginning of your round and the last stitch of your round have the same height. And this is achieved with beginning chains. Here I have chain 2 for the height of double crochet stitches. This one I chained 1 first, then made single crochet stitches around, came back, so the first stitch and the last stitch had the same height. Same thing here, chain 1, made single crochets around, and ended up in the same corner. For this type of project, again, we're going to be using the ending tail to make another front and back loop. And this time it's going to sit right on top of the beginning chains. Here, the beginning chain 2 is going to look just like the post of another double crochet stitch. And the ending tail is going to look like the front and back loops of that stitch. So what that means is you're going to end up with 1 extra double crochet stitch in your outer round, and that's why some patterns will say the beginning chain 2 or chain 3 counts as a double crochet stitch, because when you seamless finish off, you're going to end up with 1 extra stitch. To seamless finish off, you're going to cut the yarn and pull through. And this time we're going to not skip a stitch. We're going to insert a needle directly into the first actual stitch of the round. Here it would be into this double crochet stitch. If you're making single crochet stitches, it would be into the first actual single crochet stitch. So insert your needle from the front to the back, pull through. So that made the front loop over the beginning chains. And then we're going to bring the needle and insert it through the back loop of the last double crochet we made, and then also the back bar that's directly underneath. And pull until the tension matches the other stitches. So this was the first double crochet of the round. Here was the last double crochet of the round. This was the beginning chain 2, and here is where we seamless finish off. And then you can just weave in your tail on the back. And what do you do if your piece is an irregular shape and it has lots of different stitch combos and the two ends don't even connect together into a round? Well, that's when you would use your best judgment. So from what we learned today, we'll be using the ending tail to make a front and back loop to look like another stitch. So here at the end of our lettuce leaf, after the last single crochet stitch, I'm just going to play around. So take this loop and maybe push it down to here, see if that makes sense. That's probably pretty good. And I'll insert my needle here and use this stitch between the two colors in an inside corner to seamless finish off. So after this last single crochet stitch, I'm going to cut the yarn, pull out the tail, and seamless finish off down to this inside corner between the two colors. Bring my needle back around, insert into the back loop and the back bar of the last single crochet stitch, pull through, and that's the seamless finish. I think very important for seamless finish is at the end, make sure your tension of the front and back loop that you made with your ending tail matches that of the other stitches. That way it'll look just like another stitch. And then just weave in your tail on the wrong side. And now let's figure out how to seamless finish off down here at the bottom tip of our lettuce leaf. If you look over here on this side, you'll see that the last stitches all have front and back loops. And also on the other side, we have front and back loops. And these are from the starting chain. Because we only use the back bumps of our starting chain, we are left with front and back loops on this side as well. So what you want to do down here is connect the two, round off the bottom tip, and probably bring the ending tail over to the other side by the starting tail. So in the pattern, I had you end with double crochet, half double crochet, and a chain 1 here on this side. Then after you cut the yarn, pull through the tail. This ending chain 1 will help round off the corner on the right side. So what we're going to do is make another front and back loop on the other side. So I'm probably going to use the back bump of the first chain by the starting tail, insert my needle, pull through, and then insert your needle into the back loop of the ending chain 1 and pull through. Okay, and then one at a time, you can just weave in your tails on the wrong side. Well, I hope you guys found today's tutorial helpful. Please like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.